So this is the problem right here, okay, to do with this election law, right? I mean, even FastJet Performance is participating in it, really, and even when I try and raise issues about it and use the material as evidence, it is further spreading it. Look, right, here, so FastJet Performance, for example, is put this video out, and Professor Tim Wilson is also doing this as well, right? He's put here, Boris Johnson's return is a disgrace, right? But what return? A return to what? If everyone in the country suddenly says, oh, you know, Boris Johnson's returned, but what return? How has he returned? What has he done? This is the promotion of a person, Boris Johnson, his name, and his popularity, and he's always not doing something, or he has or has not done something, right? Oh, he's returned, but returned to what? Well, clearly, if everyone in the country suddenly has got a blank mind, and then everyone suddenly says, oh, Boris Johnson's returned, right? Then everyone goes, oh, damn, he's back, right? But returned to what? Has he returned to politics? Has he returned to being an entertainer, a public celebrity? What? To return to politics, right, you have to become a politician, okay? So you have to get voted in, right? He hasn't returned to Parliament because he hasn't been voted in, right? And in order to get into Parliament, he has to be voted in, right? And in a fair contest to get voted into Parliament, he has to run a campaign to let people know that he's running and to let them know that they can vote for him. And it has to have fair spending, right? Now, if everyone in England suddenly, says, oh, Boris Johnson's returned, pass it on, right? And they're all saying, no, he's back, right? And then suddenly everyone, who likes Boris Johnson is suddenly invigorated. It's going to affect him being elected or not, right? Now, this is the thing. What money and finances are promoting Boris Johnson being back? Not Boris Johnson, right? Not Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is to Conservative campaign fund, if he's back in politics, has not done anything for that. Now, this is the thing. If he did put some kind of press release out himself to the press, right, I'm back. Well, he's not back in Parliament, right? You can't... A man who wants to get elected to Parliament cannot put a press release out to say, oh, I'm back. Because that press release is actually saying, hey, guess what? Boris Johnson's back in politics. The only people who should know that he's back in politics are the people that he passes flyers to, posts letters to, and informs a local electorate about. The press cannot say, hey, Boris is back, right? Because they're saying, oh, Boris is back and you can vote for him effectively, right? And this is where the newspapers are completely corrupt. There cannot be information transacted that Boris Johnson is in any official way back. To what? Oh, I want to, knock the ball around and appear in some TV shows and talk about politics, but I'm not going to run for election. I just want to be on programs and be famous and people to like me and be influential. I'll tell them who, I'm not going to stand for election, but I'll tell them who to and not to vote for. Isn't that politics? Or what? Boris Johnson is back. He's going to go on TV and give his opinion of what the country should or should not be doing, but he won't run for politics, and that isn't going to affect you which way you should vote, either one way or the other. Boris Johnson is not back. He's never going to be back. He ran and he provided an entertainment column while he was Prime Minister in the newspaper. It was providing entertainment leading up to his own election campaigns, right? And influencing them. He provided entertainment to the public and got paid for it by a private newspaper, right? He's not back. He's never coming back. The only he's effectively, he needs to be banned from standing in any elections again or voting, which means that he's politically castrated, right? Boris Johnson should be politically castrated, legally from all possibility of standing in elections or even going to a polling station and voting, right? And the same with Keir Starmer. He led the CPS and undermined people's privileges, mainly because, if you are getting acknowledged for this, it's contempt, right? And Crown prosecutors don't want to be prosecuted with contempt, let alone the guy who was leading the Crown Prosecution Service. They want our existing rights and privileges dead and buried, effectively, right? Legally defunct when they're not, right? And even Jeremy Corbyn won't stand up for us. This is only spreading, this is like wildfire. This is only spreading, contributing towards, this is the thing. The whole newspaper and press network has been breaking the law for a long time, and it's probably why the Conservative Party and Tory Party exist as they do now, and why there haven't been independent candidates doing very well, and other parties, mainly because of the news and dynamics. And further, just the idea of Johnson's back to what? Everyone's got a YouTube channel now. Nearly everyone's got a YouTube channel or some kind of YouTube account, to watch videos on. How does Boris Johnson manage to be even more popular? You might as well have Fast Jet Performance, in Parliament. Fast Jet Performance might even stand in an election, right? Boris Johnson wants to be a personality, a celebrity, a famous household name of England, and he wants people to watch him, and he wants to talk about politics, because, if he doesn't talk about politics, then, what was he going to talk about? Tennis, right? If you ban him from talking about politics, he's not meant, well, if he's not a member of the government, he's not really supposed to be on TV even giving you advice for, how to vote or not really, because that's influencing the vote. So these people are dinosaurs. They should be extinct, really. They should be extinct legally from being famous, because the Conservative Party really now, because of all these other influential channels and independent voices, these main parties desperately need to somehow get control of the beast, get control of the handlebars of the whole media, and therefore they need to have Jacob Rees-Mogg implanted as a presenter to keep control. Otherwise, they're going to lose the Conservative and Labour control. And this is what they're doing now. They've had to conjure up Reform UK, Tice, Anderson, S for McVeigh. It's all illegal because these parties need to try and keep hold of the steering wheel. And if the MI5 are helping them, if the bureaucrats in government are helping them, if the deep state are helping them, if the police chiefs are helping them, if the police, security services are all helping them, because, they don't want different independent people to be in control of the government or other parties unless it's strategically planned for Nigel Farage to do it. Look, right, these MI5 police chiefs, police forces need to read and learn the election law and understand it. And if they want to uphold the law, then they should start enforcing serious proper laws, which is how these people get into government and start making the laws and changing the laws and affecting the laws. Unfortunately, at the moment, MI5 and the police want surveillance. They want to be able to solve Madeleine McCann type cases by having cameras absolutely everywhere, on every single street corner, on every single person. They want cameras attached, to pencil sharpeners, right? They want cameras everywhere so they can see and record absolutely everything. That's what they want. And they want politicians who are going to give them that, who are going to put up the money for that, and who are going to approve that to be installed. And they're not going to support politicians who don't want to do that, right? So we're fucked. We're fucked because the actual agencies that are running the country, if Parliament was prorogued tomorrow, right, and we didn't have any MPs meeting in Parliament and they weren't putting any new laws through or making any new laws, right, all of the government instruments still work, right, because you've got police force doing a job. You've got, supposedly, customs doing a job. You've got all these government departments that still work. They don't close down, they don't shut down. Those mechanisms are still in force. Now, people in charge of those mechanisms, they want and like certain new things and technologies, or they want to do certain things. And, they're really the ones who are pushing all this. So they're actually helping corrupt politicians get elected, and now they're facilitating election law cheating because they're refusing to investigate Reform UK. They're refusing to prosecute Boris Johnson for his newspaper column, and the newspapers are going to put stories out. They're going to keep this out of the newspapers, just like they did with Spitting Image, and then they're going to get corrupt lawyers who misadvise or gloss over the law or get you to concentrate on a completely different law, which has got nothing to do with it, right? The newspapers are controlling the narrative away from their accountability, but then they'll go after, Lord Hindfield, right? On expenses, but how does that correct the whole country? It doesn't correct election corruption and the press, TV presenters and programs. Morning TV presenters, these women, let's have Esther McVeigh on. She's my cooking pal buddy, S for me and S for, how could Esther be doing anything wrong? This is the thing that GB News is creating. Morning television style personalities who build a rapport with normal English families and try to make everything seem that it's okay and lawful and normal. And then, let's have Boris Johnson on, Boris is back. Hey, Boris is back, have him on morning television. Hey, Boris is back. Everyone loves him again. And now he's going to win the election and win because we had him on TV, and, want everyone to know that Boris is very popular again and we all like him and put our arm around him and give him a cuddle on morning television, right? Because morning television presenters are dumb and stupid, and they're participating in the corruption, right? Have a cake or have another cake, have another cake, have another cake, have another cake, at what point are they force feeding people? This is the thing. Unfortunately, it's these Jeremy Vine shows, these loose women shows, and all the newspapers, they're effectively saying, hey, right, we don't like, child sex offences, we don't like people who punch people in the street, we don't like, murderers, but we like election fraud cheats, hey, Boris is back, let's have Boris on. We love election fraud cheats, we love corrupt and illegal practices in elections, that's okay. We don't mind that. We like Nigel Farage, we like Tice, we like Esther McVeigh, we love Lee Anderson, that it's okay to cheat in elections, everyone. In fact, let's scrap the election rules, let's pretend they don't exist. But, if the TV presenter's going down the road and someone, steals her purse or punches her, then, I don't like that. I'm going to go on the television and, I got punched the other day. I won't stand for this, well, you won't stand for that, but, you'll stand for promoting Boris is back next to you, don't punch me in the face, but instead vote for Boris, because it's okay for me to promote Boris and tell everyone that he's a great guy and he's okay and he should be back and he is back and, he's going to be back on the ballot soon and, read his newspaper article. It's very good entertainment, This is the thing. These people, they don't know right from wrong or left from right, and mainly they're not interested in the law. They don't want to read the law. Right, and then they've got all these corrupt lawyers who are misguiding people. It's a complete and total mess. And in fact, all of the people who want Starmer out, the last thing they're going to do is call out reform on election law, because they need reform to get Labour out and to end this Labour Party corruption. So you've got these affiliations, people taking sides, and, all the things that their own side is doing wrong or corrupt. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to know about it. They're not bothered about it because, they just want to win, right? They want to win and they don't want to lose. And this is the thing with the Crown Prosecution Service, with these privileges cases, with petitioning, they don't want to be guilty of contempt. And this is why Starmer's corrupt. So there are problems, because the government have made laws, right, to prevent cheating, but they're cheating. They don't believe in law. They only believe in law that works for them and that is going to help them achieve what they want to do, right? They don't like or want law which is going to prevent them or obstruct them or stop them, unless you get some of these MPs who get prosecuted for these certain offences. I don't know why, but it seems to be okay for MPs now to, if an MP punches you, then, you can get them. But if they're cheating in an election or, anything like that, or they're, misadvising, they're supporting the newspapers charging us VAT illegally, and things like that. They don't want to do anything about it. Anything which can actually help independent people win, right, or beat them, they will pretend it doesn't exist, right? And I don't know why the police are even... I think that all these criminal offences that the MPs are doing, the only reason they've started to support them getting arrested, when they're not going to be arrested during a session of Parliament, they're meant to be prosecuted and arrested in between, is because it's some kind of party political control over MPs. MPs don't really know the full law properly. A lot of them are coming and going so quick now that they're not experienced enough, and also we're getting people who really aren't fit to be in Parliament, that they shouldn't really be in Parliament. Some of these people aren't really fit to hold an office in the country, in the nation. I rang the Electoral Commission up the other day, and the guy on the phone, he wasn't really up to the knowledgeable standard that he should be for that job. They're putting people in positions where they don't really know enough about the job that they're doing. Same with Advertising Standards Authority and Ofcom. But then again, Ofcom, you've got Baron Grade in charge on the board of directors, and he was in the ITV the whole time, So there are some people in control of these organisations. It seems to me, I think that this is so like Star Trek, and this is so like the Next Generation Star Trek, where they've got key people in certain strategic positions, like Michael Grade, and then they're commanding basically people who, it's all command and obey. It's all command, right? Follow the policy, staff training, command and obey. They're taking actually. These companies and entities are taking over the law through their policies. We are being taken over by it's almost like these military commanders went around the planet, around the world, conquered the world, and then got all these foreign countries to be their army. And now they've got them all in the corporate and private sector, and they're taking over the country with them. It's kind of like, I feel like people like Tony Blair and Michael Grade it's like a conquest. They went out exploring around the world. They conquered the whole planet, South America like that, and America like that, and Australia like that, except for Mr. Putin, who they're having a few disputes with, and the Middle East can't even get on with themselves, and they've raised a corporate army which has now infiltrated our government. And they're taking us over with it because they're all under staff training. You can't negotiate with them with the law. You can't afford to get lawyers. And even if you can get lawyers, a lot of these lawyers are sort of like, you look at Black Belt Barrister, he's got his own problems. We're being strategically infiltrated and taken over. And it's a little bit like the Roman conquest, but different. And there's a lot of... serious issues. There's a lot of serious issues that they're creating as well, which makes it even harder to sort it out because they're actually creating a lot of conflicts within the civilization that shouldn't really be there, which are forced on us, and those are actually existing in their corporate entities, but the corporate entities are all under kind of like these regimes now, staff-trained, conditioned regimes.